Our family cruise was supposed to be peaceful until I realized my son had been left behind on a foreign island, and no one in the family even cared. That afternoon, the sea was unusually calm. The deep blue water stretched endlessly, reflecting sunlight like millions of tiny shards of glass quivering on the surface. The sea breeze slipped into every breath, salty and cool, making me want to believe that everything on this trip would go smoothly. David and I sat at a table near the window in the ship's restaurant, our cold drinks sweating a thin mist onto the glass. The ship had just finished bringing passengers back from the small island by tender boat. We sat there, waiting for the whole family to return so we could have dinner together. The restaurant doors opened with each group that came in, bringing with them the smell of sun, wind, and the faint salty dust of sand. Familiar faces appeared one by one. My father, moving slowly but with an air of pride, telling some story that made my mother laugh until she bent forward, her hand resting lightly on his arm in complete agreement with every word. Right behind them was Lydia, my sister, expensive sunglasses slipping down her nose, walking like she was starring in a travel magazine spread. Evan and Chloe, Lydia's kids, laughed and nudged each other, like they were sharing some private joke only they understood. I looked at them and realized something was wrong. No Ben. My son. 19 years old. My eyes automatically swept across the rows of seats, then toward the entrance where the last few passengers were stepping up from the lower deck. David had noticed too. He straightened in his seat, scanning quickly through the dining area before slowly turning to me. The slight furrow in his brow was all I needed to know. No, I hadn't imagined it. "Where's Ben?" I asked, trying to keep my voice as casual as possible. Lydia barely glanced at me, a faint smirk curling her lips. Probably still wandering around taking pictures somewhere. Her voice was light, as if someone being left behind on an island was no different from getting lost in a supermarket for a few minutes. I blinked, said nothing, and turned toward the staircase leading to the main deck. The stream of passengers from the tender boat had thinned, then stopped completely. An unnameable emptiness began to spread in my chest, colder than the sea breeze outside. I could feel my heartbeat skip a fraction. Suddenly, the captain's announcement rang through the speakers, his voice steady and practiced. "Ladies and gentlemen, all passengers are now on board. We will be departing in a few minutes." The glass in my hand suddenly felt heavier. Droplets of condensation slid down its side, leaving a cold, wet trail under my fingertips. "All passengers are on board? Then where is Ben?" It felt like an invisible door had just closed, cutting me off from the rest of the family. No noise. No drama. Just an odd, still silence, the kind that signals something has already shifted, and no one but David and I can feel it. I got up from the table and stepped out of the restaurant, intercepting them before they could scatter. "Where's Ben?" This time I asked more clearly, though I still tried to keep my voice calm. My father shrugged, not looking me in the eye. "He's probably taking the next tender boat." He said it like I'd just asked about the weather, not about where my son was in the middle of the sea. I turned to my mother. She didn't shrug, but her eyes shifted slightly away. "He forgot his boarding card," she said. "He's probably sorting it out." That offhand explanation pricked at my ears like a cold needle. Forgot his card? On an island stop? And then you just leave him to handle it? I glanced over at Lydia. She was busy adjusting the strap of her designer bag, avoiding my eyes. Evan and Chloe stood behind her like two small shadows. Evan stared down at the floor, his foot rubbing against the edge of the carpet. Chloe bit her lip, and when she saw me looking, the corners of her mouth twitched, like she was holding back a laugh. "Hand me your bag," I said to Lydia, "and both of you too." "What?" Lydia raised an eyebrow, a hint of challenge in her tone. Ben's card might have slipped into someone's bag during security. We need to be sure. No one moved. The only sound was the faint vibration of the ship's engines underfoot, signaling it was preparing to leave port. The air between us thickened. Evan glanced sideways at Chloe, then back down at the floor. Chloe smirked, this time not bothering to hide it. My skin prickled, as if every cell in my body knew something was being hidden from me. It was already too late. Nothing we could do, Lydia blurted. She realized she'd spoken too quickly, and her grip on her bag tightened. Too late when? I asked slowly. No, I mean... Lydia began to stumble. I took a step closer. Evan. The 15-year-old kept his hands stuffed in his pockets, shoulders hunched. The silence stretched so long I could hear the waves slapping against the hull far below. Evan mumbled, then stopped. You what? I tilted my head, not breaking eye contact. Finally, he rushed it out like he needed to get it over with before he lost his nerve. I hid Ben's boarding card as a joke. It was as if the air around me froze solid. Why? I asked, each word dropping like a stone. Because he kept going on about safety on the island, Evan said, a trace of annoyance in his voice. Acting like we were about to get kidnapped or something. I just thought he needed to chill out. Chloe giggled. Lydia shot her a quick glance, but didn't scold her. I looked from Evan to Lydia, then to my parents. No one looked shocked. No one said, "What were you thinking?" Or, "Why would you do that?" There were only indifferent expressions, as if this was nothing worth noting. It's just a little thing, my mother said, her tone light. Ben's always overthinking. My father nodded in agreement. He's grown now. He needs to handle things himself. Can't rely on people all the time. I didn't yell, but inside something shifted. Not a loud snap, but the quiet slip of a bone out of its joint, subtle, yet I knew it would never be the same again. I stood there, feeling as though the deck had tilted slightly, not from the waves, but from the weight of a slow-burning anger pressing against my chest. It seemed as if the engine beneath my feet was vibrating harder, or maybe it was just my heartbeat pounding too loudly. No one spoke. Lydia turned her face toward the railing, letting the sunlight cut across half her face. The movement felt like a refusal, as if the sea and the horizon had suddenly become more interesting than the question I had just asked. Evan kept his head down, his toe tracing circles into the edge of the carpet, while Chloe glanced at her brother before pressing her lips together, but the twitch at the corner of her mouth betrayed a suppressed smirk. My parents, they simply stood there, calm to the point of suffocation. My father's arms were folded across his chest, his eyes detached, as if this wasn't worth discussing. My mother's hand rested on the strap of her purse, the other smoothing the hem of her blouse, as though she were waiting for the ship to depart rather than for an answer to an act that could have put her grandson in danger. I knew the old rule by heart. If I yelled, they'd throw up the "don't overreact" wall to shut me down. I'd tried before, and I always lost. They'd shake their heads, call me too sensitive, or say I was looking for drama. This time would be different. This time I would stay silent, but the kind of silence that makes the whole space take notice. I locked my gaze on Lydia, holding it long enough for her to shift her weight. You knew he didn't have his card, and you still let the ship leave? No one answered. The only sounds were passengers walking by, the clink of glasses being cleared in the restaurant, and farther away, the rhythmic slap of waves against the hull. The pause stretched so long I could hear my own breathing. In that pause, my mind slid back to years ago. I remembered when Ben was 6, and all he had to do was ask, "Is this safe?" for the entire table to burst out laughing. My father would say, "That boy's too soft," and my mother would add, "We have to toughen him up." No one realized how deep those words could sink into a child's bones. Meanwhile, Evan could kick a ball through a window, spill a full pitcher of juice onto the carpet, and still be praised as energetic and creative. Every mistake of his became a funny family story. In this family, Evan was lively, and Ben was in need of shaping up. Back in the present, David stood beside me, arms crossed tight, his eyes like sharpened steel aimed at my father. His clenched jaw told me everything. I knew he was thinking exactly what I was. This had gone too far. I repeated myself, slower this time, each word heavier than the last. You knew he didn't have his card, and you still let the ship leave? My father turned to my mother, as if she might answer for him. She inhaled softly, then let out. What's done is done. Talking about it now won't change anything. A small laugh escaped me, not from amusement, but from knowing exactly how they'd respond. And in that laugh was a decision. They didn't know it yet, but soon they would feel what it's like to be abandoned, just as Ben was feeling now. David leaned toward me and gave the smallest nod. We didn't need words. We were in complete agreement. There would be no letting this slide. My mother's words, "What's done is done," felt like a dull knife twisting slowly in my chest. Not enough to tear it wide open, but enough to shred the thin layer of composure I'd been holding onto. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked away from them. Each step on the ship's wooden deck sounded unusually loud, like the ticking of a countdown. The sea breeze slapped my face, salter and colder than it had been that afternoon. Maybe it was because night was falling, or maybe it was the surge of adrenaline making every sense sharper. The smell of salt and engine oil mixed together, seeping down my throat, a vivid reminder that I was in the middle of the ocean, and my son, alone, was still back on that island we'd just left behind. I pulled out my phone, scrolling quickly through my contacts until I found the port's number. When they picked up, their background was filled with the roar of engines and voices. I spoke slowly, enunciating every word so there could be no mistake. I need a speedboat. Leaving now. Going back to the island this cruise ship just departed from. The man on the other end hesitated. Ma'am, it's getting dark. The sea's starting to swell. We don't recommend. I'll pay double. I cut in, my voice as cold as steel. It wasn't bargaining. It was eliminating every possible excuse. David appeared beside me, placing a steadying hand on my back. He didn't ask, "What's going on?" or "What are you doing?" because he already knew. Just a single nod. "I'll go." I started to object, the instinct of a mother wanting to run to her child herself, but reason told me he was right. David was faster, stronger, and if there was any danger, he would be the safest shield for Ben. I went back down to the lower deck, phone still in my hand. Every attempt to call before had ended in busy signals, broken connections, or nothing but the long, hollow ring before cutting off. I tried again. 5th time. 6th. 7th. Each wait felt like my heart was being stretched out another beat, heavy and suffocating. On the 9th try, there was a small click. "Mom." Ben's voice trembling. I almost exhaled in relief, but held it back so I wouldn't scare him. "Ben, are you okay? Tell me right now." The background noise on his end was chaos, loudspeakers blaring, wind whipping into the microphone, footsteps, and distant voices. Ben spoke quickly, a little breathless. "I'm stuck in the waiting area. They said without my card, I can't get on the ship. It's getting dark." A couple of strange men walked past and kept staring at me. One asked if I was alone, the other said he could help if I paid him back. My grip on the cold metal railing tightened until my knuckles turned white. I swallowed the rage burning in my throat, forcing my voice into the calmest tone I could manage. "Listen to me. Find a small cafe. Sit in the back corner with your back to the wall, your bag on your lap. Don't talk to anyone. Don't take your eyes off your phone. Dad's on his way to get you. Ben hesitated. Mom, how long will it take for Dad to get here? Tonight. You'll see him tonight. But right now, you need to stay put. Do you understand? Yes. When the call ended, I stayed still, staring at the black screen of my phone as if, by looking hard enough, I could see my son. My chest rose and fell, each breath a mix of relief and fury. David was back in the cabin now. He opened a closet, pulled out the small suitcase from under the bed. Everything he packed was deliberate: a light jacket, a flashlight, a bottle of water, a first aid kit, a bag of snacks. No wasted movements, no unnecessary chatter. He zipped the case and looked at me. When I go, you stay here and handle the rest. I knew exactly what the rest meant. The people still on this ship, thinking tomorrow would be just another day, were about to learn exactly what it felt like to be left behind. When David stepped onto the private speedboat we had hired, I stood leaning against the upper deck railing, watching until its tiny golden light was swallowed by the dark waves. At night, the sea no longer glowed turquoise. It turned into cold steel, the moon shattering into fragments on each crest. My heartbeat slowed, not from peace, but because my anger had begun to change shape. No longer a boiling explosion, but something colder, focused, and with a target. I went back into the cabin and locked the door. The soft click of the lock sounded like a signal to myself. It's time. I set the laptop on the desk, flipped it open, and the pale blue glow lit my reflection in the mirror, a face stripped of any softness. Logging into the cruise's booking system, I saw the list clearly. Lydia's cabin with her 2 kids, my parents' cabin, all neatly grouped in the same reservation, the one I had paid for at the start of this trip. I moved the cursor slowly, savoring each second. Select a cabin. Cancel booking. A confirmation window appeared. Select the next one. Cancel booking. A small ding confirmed success. Repeat. Again and again, until every one of their reservations vanished from the list. No fireworks, no triumphant music. Just the quiet repetition of booking canceled on the screen. But that silence felt like a deep breath filling my lungs for the first time since Ben had gone missing. I was taking control back. That night, when David and Ben returned, close to midnight, I was sitting on the bed, listening to the sounds in the hallway. First, hurried footsteps. Then, raised voices echoing through the door. Sir, your cabin has been canceled. We can't allow you to stay here. The staff's voice remained polite but firm. Lydia's voice rose sharply, dripping with outrage. You don't understand. We have children. Then my father's voice, through clenched teeth. There's been a mistake. We paid in full. I leaned my head back against the bed frame, eyes half closed, listening like it was a symphony whose notes I'd already memorized. Then came the pounding on my door. I opened it just a crack, then fully. Lydia stood there, hair messy, eyes blazing, breath short. You're petty. I met her gaze without blinking, letting the silence stretch for a few beats. Petty, I said slowly, is leaving your nephew on an island and laughing. Before she could reply, I shut the door. The lock clicked again, sharper this time. The next morning, as sunlight slipped through the curtains, I sat at the desk and opened my phone. One quick call to the airline, a polite female voice on the other end, and within minutes, every return ticket for them was gone from the system. No warning text. No explanation. They had chosen to abandon Ben in a foreign place, assuming he'd figure it out. Now they could figure it out themselves. The rumor spread through the ship like an oil slick. Lydia's family and my parents had been told to disembark at the next port. No cabin. No return flights. No one in our group left to lean on. I didn't need to witness them packing up. The curious stares from other passengers and the hushed whispers from crew members painted the picture well enough. They had to drag their suitcases down the gangway in the blistering sun, searching for a makeshift hotel on the next island. Peak season prices hit like a slap. I heard Lydia argued furiously with the front desk over a standard room priced like a suite, while my mother muttered, "This is her fault." And her was, of course, me. And me? I was upstairs by the pool, a cold cocktail in my hand, eyes fixed on the horizon where the sea and sky blurred into a single endless blue. The breeze carried the scent of salt and something else, freedom. David sat beside me, one arm draped over my shoulder, the other holding his phone to show me a photo of Ben grinning wide over a plate of freshly grilled seafood. The three of us decided to stay a few extra days after the cruise ended. No schedules, no forced family dinners. We rented a small bungalow right on the sand, where the mornings were filled with the sound of gentle waves and the evenings lit by warm yellow bulbs over plates of fish and shrimp cooked to perfection. Ben spoke more now, laughed more. He never brought up the island again, but sometimes I caught his eyes on me, quiet, grateful. David called me dangerous in a quiet way, then laughed when I only shrugged. My phone still buzzed, messages, missed calls from Lydia, from my mother, from unknown numbers I suspected were my father's. Some pleaded, some scolded, some were just ellipses. I opened none of them. My silence was the clearest answer I could give. When we got home, I took the final step. No scene, no announcement. I simply ended every financial support I had been sending for years, money they had never truly appreciated. A few clicks, a few signed forms, and it was done. I realized something: you don't have to shout to be respected. Sometimes respect comes from clear boundaries and decisive action. And when you hold those boundaries firmly, the people who once dismissed you will have no choice but to fend for themselves and live with the consequences they created. If you've stayed with me until the end of this story, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to set a boundary with family or someone close to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next stories where we talk about courage, awakening, and the quiet power of standing your ground.